This gorgeous shirt that I'm wearing right now is made out of cotton broderie anglaise, amazing embroidered fabric with eyelets, amazing details. And this is what today's episode is all about, this wonderful fabric. Hi sewing friends, I'm Karina from liftingpinsandneedles.com. Welcome to this channel that is all about sewing, limitless sewing, and today I have a fabric focused episode. I love creating these for you. Over the years, I have created them about lots of different types of fabrics that I really like to sew with, like rayon, linen, different types of knits. And I have been creating a playlist, this type of series that's ongoing about fabric. If you want to learn about fabric, go ahead and look at this playlist. It will bring you so much knowledge. And it can really affect the way that you're going to feel about your makes, because one of the most important things is pairing the pattern to the right type of fabric to be really happy with the result. Sometimes something goes amiss in that type of pairing and the results sometimes are not what we were expecting. So that's why I do make these videos where I try to go a little more in depth about these fabrics, show you examples, practical aspects of sewing, garments I've already made, the features that they have that made me choose the fabric that I think was appropriate for them, the types of styles I would sort of avoid with the type of fabric. So they're very, very practical. Now, broderie anglaise is a fabric I've loved for a long time. I used to think it was more of a juvenile sort of fabric for little girls, maybe because I saw lots of baby little girls' dresses made out of these. I think they're absolutely adorable. But they don't have to be for little girls. They can be for adults as well. It all depends on how you make it. And the base of this fabric usually is 100% cotton, lightweight. And on top of that base, you have the embroidery, sometimes with openings, eyelets, and different designs. Sometimes very heavy embroidery, sometimes just sprinkled through and very light. And sometimes the fabric isn't 100% cotton. It's a mix of cotton poly blend. In that case, you always know because the price drops considerably comparing to the cost of 100% cotton broderie anglaise. It's quite different. The feel of it and the look of it is quite different as well. Sometimes the embroidery thread can be made out of polyester and you will know because it will look pretty shiny compared to the cotton that it's embroidered onto. Personally, I find it a little bit itchy and it just does not look as great as 100% cotton. But I know cotton can be expensive. I have also worked with broderie anglaise with a base made out of linen, which is much more expensive. I actually have a few in my collection where the base is linen. I've also made my mama blouse once that the base of the fabric was rayon, 100% rayon with the embroidery on top. Now the brand new make you're going to see later on in this episode is the Cadence top and dress from Love Notions. This is a pattern that I've made, I don't know, 15 times or something. I've lost count. I started making it back in 2019 and I've made lots of them for my mom, made some for myself. And I've actually made quite a few of these using broderie anglaise. So it's a pattern I've really loved, Feature Friday pattern for today. That means it's only $6. And at the end, you're going to see my brand new one made out of broderie anglaise. Amazing. So take advantage of this great pattern for an amazing price. I'll leave you my affiliate link in the description box. Also, right at the top of the comment section pinned so it's easy for you to find. As always, if you click on my affiliate link and you end up purchasing, you don't pay anything extra. It just supports the work that I do here on YouTube. As a designer, gives me a small commission back from any purchase that goes through my link. So if you do want to support what I do here, using my link is a great way. So thank you so much if you use. Now, because of the embroidery here, this fabric always turns into medium weight. Even though the base might be lightweight, in the end, the way you feel it, the way you touch it, the way it hangs is pretty structured and it feels more medium weight than lightweight usually. If you're loving this practical sewing content here at Lifting Pins and Needles, don't forget to like this video before you step out, and it really helps my channel be found by other people. Remember, I've already shown you all of my collection. If you've missed out, go ahead and look at that. I share all the details and all the ones that I already have, and you'll see me make them in the future. I'm always looking at them and petting them and admiring them. They're just so pretty. As I go chatting along about this type of fabric, it's not just going to be my face here. It'll be lots of images, B-roll, lots of things so that you can actually see what I'm talking about. So it's much more interactive and fun for you to see. This is a fabric that is going to shrink, that is usually going to be a little bit dirty when you bring it from the shop. So you definitely want to pre-wash this one. It's a fabric I would not just grab and cut and sew and then hope for the best, because cotton does shrink considerably. Widthwise and lengthwise, it can turn up looking pretty wrinkly. It can look pretty awful if you haven't pre-washed the fabric. So please do that. However method you want. I just wash and I hang out to dry normal. I don't use a dryer because I don't have one, but you can use the dryer. It's just cotton. Now, before you wash it though, be careful because the edges could fray, the embroidery could be delicate as well. So I would go ahead and serge all the edges before putting this into the washing machine. Just to be on the safe side, I do this for all of my fabrics. I don't do this for the knit fabrics because they don't fray, but for wovens, it's generally good practice to serge before throwing it into the washing machine. There's one feature that you might find in some of these types of fabrics, and that the selvage isn't your regular selvage. It's going to be scalloped. It's going to have embroidered edges with scallops on it. Whenever I see that type of fabric, I am right there. I want that fabric because it means that I can turn my pattern pieces the other way, cut cross grain and leave those scallops for the hem. This is what I've done with this beautiful blouse. This is called the Lyrical shirt from Pattern Emporium, and instead of hemming right here, I left the scallops, which means this is cut on the cross grain. But no worries, you can cut on the cross grain. And to not go too much in depth about it, I have a whole video on my channel, a whole episode about how to break the rules when you want to cut cross grain. This is how the thumbnail looks. Have a look. Because sometimes fabrics are meant to be cut that way, and I see so many people struggle making that decision. It's like you're making a huge mistake, and you're not. You just have to have some precautions, but you can definitely go ahead and do that, and I have done this a lot. I'm going to show you 11 of my makes where I've used broderie anglaise in this episode. I'll describe them and why I chose the fabric. You'll see the features and all of that, and you'll see that on a few of them. A lot of them, not all of them, I have cut on the cross grain, and it's been great. No issues so far. I've worn these for years, no problems at all. So for creative purposes, for aesthetic purposes, go ahead and turn the fabric around. In the new make that you're going to see today, I'm doing exactly that. This is how I saw this fabric on the roll. It's folded, as you can see. This is the cut edge. That's where they measured my fabric and cut it. And on the selvage, it's not a regular selvage, it's got scallops. So this would be the grain line going here. I would have to put my pattern pieces like this if I wanted to cut on the grain line. The arrow goes down, that is the grain line. But what's the fun in that? Knowing I can have those beautiful scallops be at the hem instead. So I'm just going to fold the fabric the other way. Now by folding it like this, I'm going to have scallops over here and scallops over there, which means that it's going to end up in the hem area. So I would just take my pattern piece, put it like that. Sometimes when you have that type of curve at the hem, you just have to straighten it out. And that's how I would cut this piece. Scallops would end up at the bottom, and then this would essentially be cutting on the cross grain. But it's not a bad thing. I think this is the way you should cut it to take advantage of that pretty bit down there. Here are the scallops. I made sure in the center to fold it right along the middle of one of these little raised shapes. So that is the center of one scallop, and that's where I folded it, so it makes sense. So that the center of the dress is going to be like that. I also want them to follow the same shape around here. I don't want to just fold it any which way and then have it all turn uneven. So that's what I've done over there. And I'm going to measure from that edge. It's about 1 inch extra that I'm going to have right here, so that I know to place the other pattern piece with that same amount of excess so that the side seams match. But it's not going to be slightly curved as it is here. It will just be straight to keep that scallop. Now, before you cut your fabric, you want to make sure you're cutting it correctly and that you have the right side of the fabric or the wrong side really determined. Sometimes it's difficult to see at first glance, but if you look up closely, you're going to see the difference. Usually the right side of the embroidery is raised and has a little bit more density than the wrong side. And you have to really look and be careful. This is the broderie anglaise I'm using today, and I wanted to show you how you can figure out what is the right and the wrong side. The cotton base, it's hard to tell. It would look the same on both sides for me, but the embroidery is a lot different. So along the scallops here, you can see on this side, they look messy. Look at that. It just looks messier and less dense. The the embroidery. Over here you can sort of see the zigzags of the embroidery. On this side it looks much neater and it's just softer. Neater looking here on the scallops. The leaves over here as well looks so much nicer, so much neater than over here. Looks quite messy. So make sure you have a good look. I'm pretty sure I know which is the right and which is the wrong, and I'm not going to get confused now. On some of these fabrics, not all of them, you might have random threads going from here to there, from here to there, along the back. That is a very easy way to see what the wrong side is. So once you're pretty happy and you know that you've chosen which is the right and the wrong side, please mark it somehow so you don't end up cutting things wrong. Mark it with a chalk, do something so that you can tell which is the right and which is the wrong side of the fabric. Now for cutting, because this fabric tends to be heavier because of the embroidery, I prefer cutting with a rotary blade and a brand new one. So you're going through it and you're going to hit bumps and lumps from the embroidery. It's not all just plain fabric like when you're just cutting 100% cotton, for example. So I prefer doing that. I think you get a nicer, neater cut rather than going with the scissors and like cutting and you're like going over bumps and things. I find easier with a rotary cutter, but that's just my recommendation. You can cut with your scissors if that's what you prefer. I just find it easier, neater and cleaner with a rotary cutter for most of my projects. Now, when you're sewing your seams, you're going to be going through a certain amount of thickness and uneven surfaces because on one layer, you might just have the plain fabric. On the other layer, you might have the embroidery. You might have eyelets in there. You might be going through openings where there's nothing. So it's quite uneven sew and you're going to hear noises when you sew. You're going to hear the needle go through it. It's not as smooth as sewing other types of fabrics. But my machine has no issues. I have this machine that's, I wouldn't say it's an advanced machine, but it served me well for the last 8 years and I can sew perfectly. Just have a listen to how this seam sounds because you're going over bulk. It sounds different to when you're sewing with other fabrics. Just listen. I can listen to the bumps of going through these sections. It's just the machine sounds differently. Change my needle. Now I have heard a lot of people that sew say that changing needles doesn't matter, that you can use them forever. I absolutely disagree with that. I'm always stocking up on my needles because I feel it does make a difference, especially for a fabric like this. You want your needle to be brand spanking new and sharp so that it can go through all that embroidery and all those layers and all those uneven surfaces. So I recommend you choose a brand new needle for your project that you're going to use with this fabric. It doesn't mean you're going to use it just for this project, maybe use it for a couple more afterwards. But let's start with a brand new needle. Now, when you're sewing your seams, usually everyone's pressing them. That is no problem. But what I like to do before sewing my seams, usually when it makes sense for the garment, I prefer to serge the edges first. If I'm sewing a simple garment that has side seams, shoulder seams, whatnot, I prefer to serge those edges first and just get those edges nice and clean. It'll get the embroidery threads that might be hanging around or fraying just sorted out first. When I'm not going to have a regular hem and this is just going to be the edge because of the scallops, I don't just cut this off because it could start unraveling. So I can see here which are my regular threads and I can pull them out. So then I can separate these 4 threads and just do a couple of knots. And that will make this end of the serge section safe and secure and it's not going to start unraveling and look ugly. Then I go ahead and sew my seams. I also like to do this because when you serge edges separately, you get to press your seams open, which I think is very appropriate for the weight of this fabric and how structured it is. It's going to look so much nicer than just having the two together serged and then just pressed to one side. I think it looks flatter, neater, it just hangs nicer. So I recommend just maybe get into the habit of serging your edges before sewing your seams and you might get used to it. It's very, very nice. I love it like that. And I have seen that in lots of pattern instructions. So it's not like I'm making this up. It does really work. And for this fabric, perfect. Now, with regards to finishing edges, I just mentioned that I like to serge my edges. I find the serger perfect for this. If you don't have a serger, go ahead and use a zigzag stitch or something with your sewing machine. What I really don't like absolutely not, is doing French seams here. It would be bulky. Oh my gosh, all the embroidery. Imagine sewing it and then sewing it again and having that bulk. Yeah, it could look nice. It could be clean and neat and beautiful, but it's bulky. I reserve French seams for very, very lightweight wovens like chiffon and rayon, things like that. But for this, where there's embroidery involved on top of your fabric base, I'd rather not. So I'm just saying, don't do it. I mean, you can do whatever you want. But imagine you have a seam that has that French seam, and then you have to fold it up and hem it. You're going to have like 8 layers there. Not cool. For a lot of projects, you might need to sew interfacing there. Depends on the features of your pattern. For example, this shirt has a traditional collar stand and collar, has a button placket. All of these sections were interfaced. I thought this fabric was okay for all of these features because the base is black. And when I use black interfacing, it blends in there, you can't see it. But what if this was red or blue and I did not have red interfacing or blue interfacing? Then if I used black or white interfacing, it would poke through the openings and it would look absolutely horrendous. So that is something that you need to think about. Now, I recently sewed a project that was blue, royal blue, amazing. I didn't have blue interfacing. So what I did instead, for the collar stand and all of these areas, the button placket, I combined it with a linen fabric that was exactly the same color. I really wanted to make this shirt with this blue broderie anglaise. I didn't have blue interfacing. There is a collar there. So I just decided to use linen instead, which is the same tone of blue. And then I could just use regular white interfacing there. That's something that you can do to get around the interfacing issue sometimes. I'm not making this up. I have actually seen ready-to-wear garments like this. In the shops, I've seen garments that have broderie anglaise on the front, beautiful, and the back is made out of linen, and it looks absolutely beautiful. I've seen that with cuffs made out of linen and the sleeves made out of the broderie anglaise. So it's something that makes the process a little easier if you're having trouble matching up the interfacing. You know, white and black, no drama. You can use your interfacing, but when you go off to other colors, sometimes you can run into problems. These are the pattern pieces for the tambour top from Love Notions. There is a button placket there and I have my broderie anglaise. Fortunately, I do have red interfacing, so I was able to use that in the center front and have a placket that is going to be really discreet. It also helps that the center front there of this fabric didn't have that much embroidery, so it didn't really affect. Add on that I had matching interfacing and I've sorted out the issue here, but I know it's very hard to find colorful interfacing. This was an exception. Same as facings, you know, you're going to see the facings on the inside, you know, so if you don't have the proper interfacing, it can look pretty awful. So in that case, I would rather do a small binding, would be less noticeable than a big facing with a contrasting interfacing. It just does not look that great. So have a think about those things. This is a simple round neckline, and rather than doing facings, which I've mentioned is problematic if you don't have the right interfacing, in this case I don't have purple interfacing, I don't even know if it exists, so I think that would be very noticeable and look really ugly. So binding is the best way to go. I've just wrapped my binding around the raw neckline and I made the binding just as usual, like normal. I did nothing different. It's a structured fabric, it'll press really well. And it's a really nice, neat way to finish a neckline or an armhole with broderie anglaise rather than doing facings. Pointy bits like this, like collars and lapels, depending on the openings of the eyelets and how big they are, you might end up with a hole right there on the point. When you're placing your pattern pieces on the fabric, draw your seam allowance so that you know to place it on an area of the fabric where you have solid cotton or solid linen or whatever the base of your fabric is, so that you can turn your corners and sew your seams without having an opening right there on that spot. That's something to think about. This pattern has a bust dart and there is a tip for the bust dart. Let me unpin this. You can see my tip is right here where the cotton is. So I'm going to be able to sew and reinforce without problems right there where the basic fabric is. What you wouldn't want is for a tip of the dart to end up right here on one of these openings, and then you can't reinforce, and then the tip of the dart would look really, really messy or just on top of all that embroidery. So make sure when you're placing your pattern that you figure out where things are landing, and then your dots are going to be okay. So from this side, the tip landed just on the cotton. It's very nice and neat. Now, how do you wear it? I've had this question before because of the little openings. I think everyone has a different opinion here. I prefer to wear undergarments that match my skin tone underneath. So you look at me and you just see beige and you don't really see a contrast. See, if I wore a black bra, you would tell, because some openings here around my midsection would look skin colored, but then on the top it would look black. It would look strange. But if it all just looks like skin, you know, you can't see a thing, it'll be perfect. That's what I do. I don't have any worries with that. Now, other people would prefer to wear like a cami or something underneath. Now, for a little girl, and this is what I've done with some of the dresses I've made my nieces, I have interlined. So I made them 3 matching dresses one summer, several summers ago, in a red broderie anglaise, gorgeous. And I bought 100% rayon in the same tone, very lightweight rayon, you know, the type that's the lightest weight. And I basically cut out all my pieces, the front with the front 2 layers, and I basted all around the edges and then treated that as one. So that's what interlining is. You just put the 2 layers on top of each other. That takes the sheerness. It lines the garment. And that was super important for me because they're little girls. They don't wear a bra, and I did not want any sheerness to be there in any way, shape or form. But it's different for us because we usually wear something underneath. So have a think about that. Types of garments I wouldn't make with broderie anglaise would be shorts and pants, although I have seen these in ready to wear where they line it partially and it looks very strange. I could totally see affecting the fit and the comfort having those 2 layers there. I've seen some long pants where they only line it up to mid-thigh and then the rest is sheer, and it just looks, no thank you. I would also not make blazers out of this fabric. I think you have enough complexity making a blazer on its own, and then add this type of fabric that has so many nuances to it, lining and things. I would just not make a blazer out of broderie anglaise. I would make a light top. I would make shirts, tank tops, skirts. I would line the skirts. Lining a skirt is super easy because you just attach lining to the waist and then plop on your waistband. It's very easy. It's not like lining a pair of pants or lining a blazer. Now I'm going to show you all the garments I've made. There's 11 of them, and then number 12 is the brand new one. And you've seen snippets of it as I've been talking about this fabric. You've seen some images of it. Beautiful, beautiful dark pink with beige embroidery. Amazing. This is a Dana Point top from Itch to Stitch, and it's a really, really lightweight cotton broderie anglaise, almost transparent, which was the perfect fabric for this pattern because this one is lined. It's got 2 layers on here. So the little openings, you can't see a thing, and it's got a really clean finish here on the armholes. Very lovely. All the details here, the placket, all of that, no worries. Everything's enclosed. Little tucks, easy to sew. All the details were very easy to sew using this fabric because it's structured, easy to press. Little pleats over here. So it's just perfect. I love it. I've loved it since I've made it in 2018, and I think it's a classic. Little tucks in there. I think it looks great on a lot of people. Bust cup size is perfect. This was an amazing fabric to work for this project because it was quite an involved project, not one that you complete in 1 hour, but when you have a fabric that's easy to work with and you know it's going to be beautiful in the end, it's just perfect. This is a corset dress from Itch to Stitch. I made it in 2019. Amazing embroidered fabric. I actually cut it all on the cross grain so I could keep the scallops that the fabric had along the selvage. So that is what I have at the hem of the dress and the sleeves. So beautiful. It's more of a boxy dress. It's meant to be worn with a belt or a sash. So I have a belt right here. Check out the details on the embroidery and the scallop hem. Made the sewing easier because I didn't have to do a hem. I just made sure to be very careful and straightening it out a little bit so that everything matched on the sides. This one does not have the openings, but it had all the embroidery. So I had to take all the same precautions I always use because there were thicker areas of the fabric. Check out the scallops over here, the hem of the sleeves, so beautiful. Something lovely that you can use with these fabrics when you see that on the selvage. Don't be scared to just turn your fabric around. Here we have a bit of elastic. It's a raglan sleeve, a V neckline, button placket over here with interfacing, and I didn't have problems with that because there are actually no openings in this one, just a lot of embroidery onto the 100% cotton. To this day, I think this is one of the prettiest dresses that I have, just because the design is amazingly gorgeous, but pair it with this fabric that is super striking, and it's black and white, and I'm just so happy with this. It's just absolutely beautiful. It's a special dress, you know? Fabric is everything here. This is the first of 3 Cadence tops I've made my mum. Beautiful broderie anglaise. Now you can see that the eyelets are on the upper chest area. I cut it like that on purpose. Then around where her bust is, it's more closed off in the embroidery. Matched up the center seam, left the scallops there for the hem, but I did hem the sleeves normally. I think this is a striking top. Really hard to see from far away because white is incredibly difficult to film. This was an expensive fabric. My mum really treasures this top. A few months later, I was able to buy some broderie anglaise for my mum to make her more Cadence tops. This is a navy one, also the scallops at the hem and on the sleeves. In this case, the fabric was quite small and it really helped me to eliminate the center back seam. The eyelets are pretty noticeable. She's wearing a skin colored bra. This is her black version, the same, kept the scallops on the hem and on the sleeves, eliminated the center back seam, and these are really nice. She's wearing them right out of the sewing machine with one wash. At this point, they're softer, they're not as crisp as you can see them there, and they get more comfortable to wear as time goes on. Another hard to film top, this is a Presto tunic. This is made out of 100% rayon with the embroidery on top. Up closer, you're going to see the details of the embroidery a little bit better. Very heavy fabric it turned out to be. It was not that easy to work with. I did all the details, the placket, the inset, the collar, all of that. I had no issues with choosing the interfacing here, and it's a lovely blouse that my mum really enjoys. This is the Tambour top from Love Notions, also in a 100% cotton broderie anglaise. It's absolutely gorgeous. It's got raglan sleeves. It's got an elasticized feature finish with bias tape on the inside. You can also make them longer, button placket, all these details, totally possible. It helps that my fabric here close to the selvage had a section with no embroidery, and I left that close to where the placket was going to be, so it meant I could use regular interfacing in there, not have to worry about having red interfacing. If I'd made the placket around this area where the embroidery and details are, I would have had to worry about having red interfacing in, and if that wasn't possible, I would have just made the version of this pattern that's just on the fold without the placket. So sometimes on the selvage you will find a nice chunk, maybe 2 or 3 inches of the fabric, just the regular cotton, and then the embroidery starts, and I took advantage of that right here. Beautiful top, really love it. It's a little shorter, it's a little more structured, little boxier, that's why it's a little shorter, and I love it. This is my first Sweet Talker bubble sleeve top from Pattern Emporium. I've used a white 100% cotton broderie anglaise. The lower scoop neckline, you can do a mid and a high, and on the inside it's finished with bias tape that I made from the same fabric. I love that technique. It's really fun for me all the time. And the bubble sleeve, what can I say? It's just the most adorable sleeve I've ever sewn. This one is the shortest version. I think the broderie anglaise really shows off the design of the sleeve. It's adorable. Glad to have this beautiful blouse in my wardrobe. This is a Madhu top from Seam Work. When I made it a couple months ago, it was free, but it's not free anymore. And this is a really beautiful broderie anglaise, 100% cotton. The neckline finish is with facings. There's no interfacing involved. I used black elastic, and you might see it through some of these openings, but it's not too contrasting. I would prefer to use black than white elastic because that's threaded through that small casing right there. All the details here are perfect for this type of fabric. There's a small casing over here as well. This is a semi-structured fabric, so all of these gathers really shine and look really beautiful and crisp. Really love it. At the waist, it's a little shorter. Also has a casing here that I can wear either like that or just tuck it in, and then it looks like I've tucked this into my pants, but I haven't. Beautiful top and perfect for broderie anglaise, 100% cotton. I love the color. I love this. It's perfect. The best fabrics for the lyrical shirt are drapey fabric. I've gone a little bit rogue, this time in a very, very structured cotton broderie anglaise. There's zero drape here, but you can see the fit is still lovely. You know, it's not oversized, it's not boxy. I think it's perfect. In this case, I used the scallops from the fabric that are along the selvage, so I didn't have to hem. I did the same with the bottom of the sleeves, and I've got the collar stand and collar that made much more sense for the structured fabric. The sleeves really shine with the structure of this fabric. You know, the gathers look so much more poofy and beautiful, and I think it's just marvelous. I've straightened out all my hems to keep the scallops. I really enjoyed the collar stand and collar, always a lovely technique that I love doing, and it's not hard to do. The bust dart as well gives you amazing shaping on the side with a full bust option. I think this top really dresses up these jeans. This is the 11th Aria shirt that I've ever made, and this time it's a mix of broderie anglaise with linen details. It's a little shorter. I've straightened out the hem and eliminated the back pleat beneath the yoke, so it's a little slimmer fitting. I love it like that. I like the length here of this shirt for the pencil skirt, and I've opened up a little slit on the side just as something extra. I really like that. I just have a skin color bra underneath, that's all. So it all looks beige under there. The placket is made out of blue linen, same as the collar. It's actually the same color, so that was amazing. I had just a little bit to make a short sleeve right there, so I'm really happy with that. And the yoke at the back is the blue linen as well. So it's a combination of both fabrics. I think the result turned out super nice. All in one collar. It's very easy to sew. Interface both sides, so it's more structured. There is a bust out with a full bust option, and I really like it there. And I have patch pockets there on both sides, partially to cover the bra a little bit, because the broderie anglaise has all those little openings. Such a pretty shirt. It was a present to myself. I really, really love how it turned out. I'm outside to show you my new Cadence dress. It's amazing. The fabric is everything. Dark pink magenta type situation, very nice. I used the scallops there for the hem of the sleeves. I put my pattern piece against the edge anyway, so my sleeve turned out a little bit longer because I didn't have to fold up the hem allowance. You save so much time when you don't have to do hems, and it's not being lazy, it's just using this beautiful feature that you get in these fabrics. Now, I showed you that I finished the serge section here. When I press it open, I actually tack it down there because it's along a curve and I don't want that moving anywhere. So just along there, I did a few hand tacks there to hold it in place. Neckline finished with binding is my preferred way. Sometimes I tuck the binding all the way in if I'm using a contrast fabric or something matching. But if I have the same fabric, like in this case, I just wrapped it around the raw edge. You can see it's very neat, it was easy to do. And then I don't have to be worried about having interfacing that won't look ugly if I was using facings. So if your pattern has facings, you know, you don't have to. You can do binding. You can swap. Easy peasy. So I love that. My bust darts, you can barely see them, but they are there. Super important for this pattern. For the dress, you could add a casing and an elastic that you sew on. But I decided to leave that feature off and just use a belt. Very easy. And the side seams are very simple. I did that same thing where I tack it down at the bottom. You can see it finishes on something that makes sense. The scallops are always so beautiful. Simple side seams pressed open, easy sleeves to set in. This is a simple pattern. Once you get the fitting right, it can take you a long way. And the most impactful thing about this dress is going to be the fabric, because that's what broderie anglaise gives you. So let's see this one on. It's so beautiful. This is my brand new Cadence dress. I've just got it like it is. You can see it's a little loose at the waist. You have the option of putting a casing with elastic there, but I left it as is. You can see it's at the mid-knee, below the knee, but there's always the belt, which is my option. I really want to use the belt because it just makes it a little more versatile. When I put the belt on, it's going to become a little shorter. That's how it looks like with the belt on. I'm much happier like that. Very nice, just gives you a little bit of shaping. For a top, I would normally just use my bra underneath and then my skirt, my pants, but because this is a dress, fitted sleeve underneath that matches my skin tone. So that's what I have underneath to avoid the sheeness of the little opening. Check out the hem with the scallop detail. It's so, so beautiful. One of my favorite parts about these types of fabrics is that you can usually find that. Just cut it cross grain and you'll be sweet. And look at the amazing embroidery here. It's just beautiful. For this pattern, you have the option of finishing it with binding, which is what I did. You can clearly see it. It was very easy to do with broderie anglaise, or you can do facings. I would not have wanted to do facings because you can see that through the openings. If you don't have the matching interfacing, it can look awful. So that was my option here. Very happy with the sleeve fit. Everything's great here, and check out these beautiful scallops there on the hem. Great feature to take advantage of for aesthetic reasons. Love that. Rounded neckline. It's not too high, it's not too low, it's super modest. Great mobility over here. I'm very comfortable. The bust dart fits beautiful here. 10 out of 10. It's supposed to be there, and it makes the fit so much better. This dress was super easy to sew. I've made it so many times. I have the fit down. All I had to do now was enjoy sewing this beautiful fabric. I think it turned out stunning, and it's going to be one of my very special dresses for sure. I really hope I've inspired you to go ahead and look for broderie anglaise fabric. It's amazing for summer. It's amazing for little girls. Anything you make, it can be super simple, but just because the fabric is so amazing, it's going to be so much more impactful, so much more valuable than just making it out of a plain fabric with no embroidery. So in this case, the fabric is everything, and I absolutely love it. One of my favorite fabrics. Don't forget to check out the Cadence today, only for $6. And I hope this video all about broderie anglaise has inspired you to look for the fabric and sew it up. I'm sure you're gonna love any garment you make. It's always so beautiful. That's all from me. I'll see you again next week with more sewing content over here at Lifting Pins and Needles. Bye.